Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This day in sports history. It's March 26th, and with a little bit of a lull between the excitement of the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament and the Sweet 16, I'll help you fill that void with some great tournament moments, because on this day, over the last 80 years, there was a lot of tournament basketball, a lot of March Madness, great matchups, buzzer-beating shots, monumental comebacks, and terrific performances. So let's start in 1945. It was the NIT championship game between DePaul and Bowling Green. DePaul had the original big man, the bespectacled George Mikan, who dominated in this game, scoring 34 points in a 71-54 win. DePaul did not have an equal in this 8-team field, winning by an average of 28 points in their 3-game march to the NIT title. Now, at this point, the NIT and the NCAA tournaments were on equal footing. Both tournaments invited 8 teams to play in their postseason tournaments. The NIT hosted all the games at New York's Madison Square Garden. The NCAA tournament split between New York City and Kansas City, with their title game also being held at MSG. Oklahoma A&M, which would become Oklahoma State, won the NCAA tournament, led by their big man, Bob Kurland. Mikan's DePaul team and Kurland's A&M team played another game at Madison Square Garden to determine an undisputed national champion a few nights later, with Oklahoma A&M winning that game. It would not be until 1950 that the NCAA would mandate conference champions to play in its tournament, beginning the dilution of the NIT. Now to 1973 we go. Bill Walton and the UCLA Bruins, winners of the previous 6 NCAA championships, were taking on Memphis State. It was one of the all-time great performances in NCAA tournament history. Walton scored an NCAA championship game record 44 points in the 87-66 win over Memphis State. Walton hit an astounding 21 of 22 shots that night. His only miss, he got one of his 13 rebounds and he put it back in. The 44 points is still the most scored in a title game. Interesting fact, because the NCAA did not allow dunking at this point, he actually had 4 baskets disallowed. So, under the rules just 3 years later, when dunking was legalized, he would have been 25 of 26 from the field with 52 points. In 1979, it was the first ever meeting on the basketball court of Larry Bird and Irvin Magic Johnson in the national championship game. It was a tasty preview of what was to come for the next 20 years or so in the NBA. Bird's undefeated and top-ranked Indiana State Sycamores against Magic's Michigan State Spartans. There was a lot of hype leading up to this game, obviously, and it led to a huge television audience. In fact, it is still the highest-rated basketball game for either college or NBA, with a Nielsen rating of 24.1. Bird had been named the National Player of the Year by every organization, publication, and authority who gave out such a thing, and it was well-deserved. The Sycamores were nowhere to be seen in the preseason rankings that year. Bird was the leading scorer and rebounder for Indiana State in all but 2 games that year, and by midseason had the Sycamores in the top 5. The Spartans were a little fortunate to make the tournament that year. They got off to a bit of a shaky start in the conference portion of their schedule. They were just 4-4 in Big Ten play at the end of January, and they could not rely on a Big Ten tournament for an automatic bid. It didn't exist yet. But the Spartans went on a 9-game winning streak to get right and win the league. This game did not quite live up to all the hype it generated, though. The Spartans held a double-digit lead for most of the game, and they won 75-64. Bird finished with 19 points and 13 rebounds, and he was devastated by the loss, saying many years later that the sting still had not worn off, saying, I knew going into that game that I was going to have to play the best game I'd ever played in my life, and I didn't do it. I let us all down. Magic had a game-high 24 points, but even though the game was a bit underwhelming, the influence of this game, and obviously these two guys, was tremendous. The game grew in popularity year after year from this point, and once Bird and Magic got to the NBA, the rise was meteoric. In 2005, it was a dramatic comeback in an Elite Eight game between Arizona and top-ranked Illinois. With just 4 minutes, 4 seconds remaining on the clock, and Arizona winning by 15, it looked like the Wildcats would breeze to the Final Four. Even more so when they were up 8 with a minute to play. But Illinois' Luther Head hit a huge three. Then D. Brown converted a steal into a bucket, and when Darren Williams drained a three with 38 seconds left, it was tied at 80, and it stayed that way, forcing overtime. Williams continued his hot shooting, hitting a couple of threes in OT. However, Arizona had the ball out of a timeout with 11 seconds to go and down 1. But they squandered away the time, taking a wild 20-footer as time expired, and Illinois took their talents to the Final Four instead with the 15-point come-from-behind win, 90-89. So, what should Arizona have done? Well, probably what Scotty Reynolds did on this day in 2009 when he got the ball at midcourt and drove it down the throat of the Pitt defense and beat the buzzer and the Panthers with his game-winning layup, sending his Villanova Wildcats to the Final Four. Whew, that was a lot of hoops. So, how about a shift in gears and I wrap it up with today's non-sports Did You Know? Pez candies were originally sold to smokers to help them quit. That's all for today. Hopefully your bracket is not too busted heading into the Sweet 16 this weekend. Join me tomorrow for more This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.